I'm here on Raglan Road, famous in Dublin, and I'm outside the embassy of Turkey, and we just want to make some comment on the current situation in north and eastern Syria, which Turkish army have had military forces there for most of 10 years now, since the onslaught of regime change, which was sponsored by the United States and others. Because today in Syria the country is being carved up. In the south, the Israelis have marched in with their tanks and taken over territory. Of course, the Americans have a solid grip on oil and are backing the current regime, HDS I think they're called, but Jolani, their self-appointed leader, is a man who's been on the international list of terrorists for many, many years. He and the forces he represents are better known as head choppers. They are people who have bulldozed historic ancient monuments and carried out indiscriminate murder of anybody objecting to their caliphate, if that's the right word for it, their Islamic State. So today, in recent weeks, I think there's upwards to 40,000 people have been massacred in the eastern areas on the seafront of Syria, Alawite people and Christians, many of them, in an ethnic cleansing exercise. So I'm with Dr. Declan Hayes, who has some experience in Syria, having been there many, many times over the last decades, and we'll have a word with Declan. One sec now. Good day, Declan. I see you have a copy of the Irish Catholic with you in your hand there. You have an article published in that today on the situation facing the Alawite and a lot of Christian people and minority sects, if you like, in that part of Turkey. Can you tell us what is happening? Because the reports, whilst difficult coming through, media tend not to cover them, but the reports coming through indicate that there's whole-scale massacre taking place on a purely sectarian ethnic cleansing basis. What is your experience, Declan?
Well, I've been going to Syria for over 10 years during this genocide. I was in Damascus the night Damascus fell. I was quite lucky to get out of it. It is a sectarian massacre, but it's also a political massacre, because what's happening is the big powers, Turkey, Israel, America, the European Union, want to destroy secularism in the Arab world, and the last man standing was Syria, the Syrian Arab Republic. They got Iraq, they got Libya, they're moving on now to Yemen and Iran. War, war, war. They paint this out as some Alawites doing a rearguard action against democracy, as if these people know anything about democracy. I was in the Armenian town of Kasab when the Turks allowed ISIS in to rob everything. They robbed children's teddy bears, they robbed doors, they left absolutely nothing there. In Aleppo, they stole the railway tracks, anything not nailed down, they robbed. The Turks rob. They're not alone there, because the Europeans and the others, the Americans, have robbed the oil, they've robbed the wheat in northeastern Syria. So how things currently are is they are hunting Alawites morning, noon and night, and Christians and Armenians too. Now, the way Syria was constructed under Hafiz Assad and Bashar Assad is there was not a vibrant political community there. There was a big civic society, but essentially it was a society at peace, a people who made things and were quite inward looking, you know.
What's happening there in recent weeks, can you tell us?
These people, and there are thousands of videos attesting to this, they're going house to house, village to village, slaughtering every Alawite, man, woman and child they can get their hands on. The Alawites are 10% of the Syrian people. The Christians were about 12, they're down to 2 now, because the rest of them have got out of Dodge. The slogan was Alawites to the tomb, to the grave, Christians to Beirut, and they are determined to rid the place of any minority and have some sham Islamic caliphate that serves the interests of Israel, Turkey, Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood, that's very big here in Dublin, the United States and the European Union. That's the state of it.
So who is in power now? Who is this character Jolani, I think they're referred to?
Jolani is a nobody who was a prisoner of the Americans in Iraq, where they turned him and used him to their own advantage. Jolani then headed their caliphate of moderate rebels in Idlib. Idlib was a poor province, but because of everything they robbed, it became rich, right? And four-wheel drives, state-of-the-art, this, that and the other. He's their figurehead. What is obvious today is he has no political agenda except rob, rape and murder. The European Union are tossing him a few billion euros. This is after they slaughtered all around them this very month. The only entrepreneurship they seem to have is organ harvesting and stuff like that, which was really big. Yeah. We're talking about very evil people who have the full support of Turkey, the full support of Qatar, Israel, the European Union, America, etc. That's what we have, and the best we can do is a couple of articles in the likes of the Irish Catholic or wherever else we can get them in. Ireland is as complicit in this as are the Turks or anybody else.
Yes, and what role, you say, they're collecting large amounts of money, including from the European Union. I think they have a fund building up to nearly 6 billion euros at the moment to hand to this man Jolani to develop Turkey. So is the European Union supporting this new regime in Syria?
They starved the Syrians. They starved them. So the Syrian soldiers were starving. Not hungry, starving. The ordinary person had nothing. People were reduced to worse than what the Irish were during the famine. And that was pretty bad, right? You know, looking for a blade of grass here or there. And now they're throwing them a couple of crumbs, right? Now you tell me, any country like Iraq or Libya where these interventions have done any good, humanitarianism and the rules-based order and democracy is not the name of the game. The name of the game is to destroy any potential opposition to the grand plan they have, which is to divide this Syria and contiguous countries up and keep the money flowing into Turkey, into Israel and into the European Union and into America. Turkey at the moment, the economy is in the toilet. Instead of sorting that out, they're concentrating on aiding and abetting the slaughter in Syria.
Yeah, so a lot of this is based in Tartus, isn't it?
The Alawites and Christians are in Tartus and Latakia are the coastal areas.
Yeah. Now, just north of Lebanon, isn't it?
It's to the east of Lebanon. Now you could seal these off. There's 3 major roads into it. So what's going to happen is after they've slaughtered Alawites and Christians left, right and centre in Tartus and Latakia, going into these little villages up the mountains, the European Union and all these do-gooders and Israel will go in to protect the minorities and establish an Alawite state under NATO tutelage, where the Alawites will know their place at the bottom of the heap. They're doing that in southern Lebanon with the Druze. Right? Now, the thing with the Druze is, the Druze generally go with whoever is the bigger guy in the block. So in Israel, they're pro-Israeli, that's, you know, because they're a very inward-looking group. In Lebanon, they play a slightly different game. But in Syria, they have been central to the Syrian army and also protecting their own cabbage patch down the south. But when Druze men, women and children are being slaughtered, which they are, the Druze have to get any protection they can, which is Israel helping them. The same Israel which evacuated the White Helmets murder gang and which bombed Syria non-stop and which I'm sure was involved in the assassination of Syrian scientists after the fall of...
Yes, and Declan, this week, that same Israel has, I think, slaughtered Palestinians just in the last few days in a renewed unadulterated, just aggression, violence. You can't call it war in Gaza because you need an enemy to have a war. This is just innocent civilians being slaughtered. Much the same numbers now are being slaughtered amongst the Alawite population in Syria. So it augurs badly for the world that this is allowed to happen.
The Alawites, the Druze, the Christians of Syria are in a position that they just want to live, right? Now, if we go back to the famine, the Irish people were trying to survive, that's all. They weren't in a position to do anything to anybody or say anything to anybody. That's where the Syrians are today. And people go on about Adolf Hitler and so on, but I'd go on about Adolf Hitler's willing executioners, the European Union, the Irish government, people like Barry Andrews and Ivana Bacik are as much up to their necks in what's going on in Syria. They lay their cards on the table as any collaborator with Hitler was during that thing.
Well, Declan, our sympathies goes to the people of Syria of all denominations, and we wish them well, but that they have such support on our dollar from the European Union backing what just a year ago were condemned as head choppers, that they're now building them as the new legitimate government of the Syrian people.
The new
This augurs the new world order, and we better beware.